Welcome back to ThinkTech. I'm Jay Fidell. This is Guttman's Garage, and we have a movie for you. This is called Rough Diamonds. We're going to review Rough Diamonds today, which is actually a Flemish movie made in Belgium. It's a story that you have never ever heard before. So many elements here are, off the chart. They're not the standard plot lines. We'll be right back with Steve to examine what happened. Welcome to your show, Steve Guttman. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. And
Well, let's talk.
this is a very different show in terms of what we're going to be talking about.
Well, why do you say that? I mean, it's hard to get your hands around this movie. I was telling you before we began the show that I liked the movie, but I didn't know why. And maybe you can help me understand why.
Well, I can certainly understand the confusion because, you have a number of themes that are running through the movie, starting with the fact that the lead character is somebody who had dropped out of and moved away, left the family. And the family is a very orthodox family in Antwerp that's been involved in the diamond trade for an extended period. So you've got that storyline about the diamond trade. You got a storyline about what it is to be Orthodox. You got a storyline about somebody who leaves the family, and then given what you learn about the family that he's associated with in terms of his ongoing business affairs, suddenly you have a gangster movie. So yeah, there's a few things happening.
Well, how much of it is educational? And let me just begin with where I learned things, okay? I'm always trying to learn things. I watch movies to learn things. I learned about Antwerp. I learned about the diamond trade. I learned that the diamond trade is declining, which that was a theme that kept recurring, where the various characters who commented on the nature and profitability of trading and cutting diamonds in Antwerp ain't like it used to be. Remember Jock Adler? Jock Adler had
sure.
Yeah. He had an office in the Pan Am building here in Honolulu, and he said, I can give you diamonds from Antwerp, and the implication was that that was the best in the world. But that's not what this movie tells you. This movie is telling you that the diamond trade and the people involved in it are leaving it, and they're not making any money anymore. That was really a shakeup to me, and I wondered exactly. Oh, and the Indians are involved, isn't it? The Indians are involved in the diamond trade now.
Right, and that's a whole nother storyline that runs through this because the fact that the Jewish families are the ones that had been controlling the trade, but the Indians have got a larger and larger percentage of the business, and there's actually, in terms of the trade in Antwerp itself, that particular trade association has an election, which becomes part of the storyline, and in which whether an Indian fellow is going to become for the very first time a president of the trade association.
Yeah, and you learn about the politics of that election. You also learn that the diamond trade is totally international. People are buying and selling diamonds from all over the world, including places in the Middle East that make you concerned about it. And I didn't realize, I thought that, and there's some comment in the movie about this, I thought that Antwerp was selling diamonds to Jock Adler and other people in the United States, and that the Orthodox Jewish families who were involved in Antwerp were also involved in Manhattan on 47th Street, where the diamond exchange. But in fact, these diamonds can be obviously very valuable. Even 1 carat of a diamond can be very valuable in euros, in dollars, what have you, and they can trade in large numbers of carats all over the world. And because of the concentration of the diamonds and the value of the diamonds and the value of the cash that comes out in trading them, both as rough diamonds, uncut, or as processed diamonds after they're cut, the stakes are very high. And because the stakes are high, and I buy this, I would accept this. Because the stakes are high, there is a dark side to the trading. And there are people who are, criminals involved in the trading and all the machinations that go with having large sums of money and large volume of diamonds. And so it becomes a cops and robbers thing involving the Flemish police in Antwerp, and then the politics of the Flemish police, who, for political reasons, don't want to prosecute or even investigate the Orthodox Jewish community that has traditionally been the leaders of the diamond industry there. So you get so many different threads going this way and that way, and a lot of it seems to me to be stuff you can learn that you didn't know before.
And you also got the money laundering that's using, instead of trying to transfer cash, using the rough diamonds as a way of getting the wealth transferred from one country to another. And that's so much of what was occurring in terms of the whole detective story. And then you have the side story that started. They played more and more as the series goes through the 7 episodes that make up the total package, where the prosecutor, the lead prosecutor, seems to be a very vengeful person, and when you first are introduced to her, she has a scene with her father, and her father has had some dealings with the diamond trade and the Jews who are running it, and he's very complimentary to them. And her commentary is almost on an anti-Semitism level in terms of her reaction to what her father is saying, and her behavior in terms of not being willing to make the deal that the politicians are wanting to do. You can't help wondering about the anti-Semitism, though they don't carry that forward past the introduction of her, and she instead just becomes just a person who's just has a very self-righteous attitude in general, as to whether at the heart of what she's doing is she is anti-Semitic. You really can't say.
No, you can't. And her primary target starts and ends with the Albanians. You recall the Albanians
Right.
are involved in the diamond trade, and they're very mean. They're Eastern European mean, like the Russians. And she starts her investigation trying to trace the diamonds in Antwerp.
Well, she's not trying to trace the diamonds because she didn't initially know about that. She's initially trying to trace the money laundering. They're
Yes.
trying to find out where it is, and then when they are at the harbor, by chance they open up a box and they realize, whoa, wait a minute here, there's rough diamonds, and how does this translate to what they were doing and had been traditionally looking at? So it opened up a whole new avenue, and she is specifically told by her boss, we're not going after the diamond people. And she totally ignores it, and is willing to even to give up her career,
Yeah.
in order to actively pursue this whole issue of the laundering, using the diamonds as a laundering source, and actually to punish the individuals who are involved with it. Meanwhile, you've got the I don't know if he's the oldest son, though. Yeah, but one of the sons who had left the family is actually working for a woman who is doing cocaine trafficking in England, and she apparently gets the cocaine from the Albanians, and that's where that particular money transfer comes in, and he keeps wanting to solve the family problem with the money he can raise by doing the trafficking. At the same time, he knows how dangerous it is and wants to cut it off. And so you have him going in two different directions at various times through the series. Very complex.
Very complex, but I would say it's not that hard to follow it. Sometimes you get into these cops and robbers movies, and you need a yellow pad to write it all down. But that's not the case here. You can follow these various subplots, and I agree with you that the whole affair in London and the cocaine is important because it seems to bring things together. It's bringing the EU together. It's identifying the Albanians and the money laundering, and you say to yourself, "Gee, I guess this is what goes on in the EU. This is what goes on in Eastern Europe." And from a ruthlessness point of view, this is what goes on with the Albanian Eastern European style of doing business. But I think the largest single plot line is the family.
Oh, absolutely.
It focuses on the Wolfson family. In Yiddish, that would be Wolfson family, which has apparently been doing the diamond trade in Antwerp for hundreds of years. And they're very successful at it. And all of that depends on credibility and trustworthiness. And so this is an example of fractures in the credibility, fractures in the trustworthiness. And it all starts with one of the younger members of the family is an inveterate gambler, and he's gambling away money that belongs to the family. And then ultimately, well, actually at the very beginning of the movie, which springs all of this to life, is he commits suicide in a very knock your socks off kind of way, and then all these plot lines begin, they begin running out of that suicide, and
right.
You learn so much about the family and their religious practices, and about the diamond industry and how the family works the diamond industry, and how from generation to generation they keep on passing the diamond business down. All of this that's why I said these are stories you never heard before. Who ever saw a movie in Flemish? In Flemish? It's really beyond my experience. So I felt refreshed right on through that I was seeing things that I didn't know about.
Yeah, no, after the suicide, that's actually what brings the brother who had left many years ago. I'm thinking they used 15 years, but it was definitely an extended period that he had been totally disconnected from the family. But because his brother had committed suicide, he comes back, and then there's the story that's also runs through it with his own son. And the fact that the mother of the child is right from the beginning you're told is deceased, so he's the only living parent of the child, and you have some very kind of nice family relations in terms of how he interacts and trying to learn to be a father, at the same time not having the other family members being part of the structure.
Yeah, and he is drifting back into the orthodox structure, and so is his boy. His boy wants to wear a yarmulke. His boy wants to go to the synagogue and pray. This is new for the boy who had never been exposed to that. And our hero is brought back into all these ritualistic things, and the tension, the dynamic here is, should he? There's an old Jewish, I guess it's a culture point, where if your brother dies married and you are unmarried, you have an obligation to marry your brother's wife. And I have heard this for years and years. And and
They do an
so
interesting twist on all this
yes,
because the wife of the brother who commits suicide, our fellow who left for England was her boyfriend. She was prepared to marry him, and then he had suddenly, apparently, very abruptly left, and she was just left in the lurch. And that's when the other brothers came in and committed who committed suicide, ends up marrying, and she's got two kids from that marriage. Um, and our lead character, I don't know if we can really say our hero, given his crime background and everything else, because he can get pretty violent. I mean, in his own actions, but he's clearly the lead.
yeah.
You know, he kind of rekindles the relationship that he had before she married his brother. And you really don't know where she's going to end up throughout until the very end of the series.
Oh, it's a cliffhanger. It runs throughout all of those episodes.
Yeah,
Is he going to, rekindle with her? Is she going to rekindle with him? And you never know until the last scene.
Right. Yeah, it almost is the last scene. Yeah, it's certainly the last episode, where there's a decision in terms of making what will be her decision on that. And then you have the whole marriage. The lady who does the matchmaking, and the pressure to be married if you're a female. You and I now. This is not the first Orthodox family movie that we've watched, and all of them have a very similar theme of being much more repressive of the female than I had realized growing up. That certainly was not. I just come from, I guess, family with very, very strong independent women. But I find this very, very strange. I mean, just how controlling the whole relationships are, and especially for the female.
Yeah, that tension was there, and she, that is the widow, was so tentative about everything. She looked like she was the deer in the headlights. Maybe that was the role she was supposed to play, but I couldn't really sympathize with her because she really didn't have the character in the movie to become independent, to leave with him. If she was, and he likewise was unsure. So you were rooting for them. You wanted them to get back together again. They would have been a kind of perfect match, to resume their previous relationship. But it never got home. It never got home. And I'll reveal that in the final analysis, she wound up taking the advice of the matchmaker, who I grew to dislike intensely in this movie. She was always manipulating,
Right.
and she took a marriage proposal, accepted a marriage proposal of some Orthodox guy who came from New York and who was a real sweetie, but I forget his name, but
he had grown up in Antwerp. And
that's right.
And yeah, and had left Antwerp. I mean, he's your opening comments about the diamond trade not being what it once was. He's now apparently in New York, and I kind of gathered a real estate developer. Well, I'm not totally sure, what the new life is, but that it seems to be what those that were leaving the diamond trade were going into real estate.
Oh yeah, and also in Europe too.
Right.
There was one character who left the diamond trade. Don't remember exactly why, in Antwerp, and went to Brussels, right? And that part of the family got into real estate. So they were leaving the diamond industry. Anyway, so what I found interesting was at the end when I was rooting for the resumption of their relationship, and I did see the fellow who came back after 15 years as the hero of all this, and I'll tell you why in a minute. I thought they would get back together because there were enough contacts and affectionate remarks made between the two of them at great distance, and actually they had sex together, didn't they? Which is
Very
quite
briefly,
remarkable.
that's actually
quite
there was very
remarkable.
little sex in this movie.
Yeah,
It was surprising how little there was given a lot of the dialogue. The relationships, that type of family relationship was certainly very much discussed throughout the 7 episodes. But in terms of actual scenes, I think there was only two scenes in two of the episodes where they're and they weren't very, very graphic. I mean, one was just simply they both were in the same bed together. But that was one example of this film was definitely not a Hollywood production. This was a Hollywood production. Yeah, I think you'd have had a different ending, and the two of them would have gone off together, and then that would have been would have been part of a theme of a whole new series as to how it all did not work after they got back together.
yeah, but they didn't get back together.
They didn't.
That's the final surprise. You expected, you were rooting for that, but no. She went back to New York with the matchmaker's proposal, and he went back. He stayed. He stayed in the family. He stayed in the what do you want to call it? That generation of managers, and he was going to stay with his sister, who I thought was a very appealing character, and his brother.
Probably is the most appealing of all of them.
Yes, his brother, who was kind of an idiot, who always got in trouble and lied to people and all that. Then you think an Orthodox Jewish family, they don't lie to each other, but this is another kind of revelation in this movie. But what I thought was interesting was this, Steve, and I would like to spend a little time with you on this. He was a problem solver, our hero, Noah.
Yes.
Was his name. He was a problem solver, and he was faced with these very complex business issues about deals for millions and millions of dollars worth of diamonds and cash and all kinds of quasi legitimate deals, and the future of the family and their survival with all of these problems around them, including the prosecutor you mentioned. Okay. And he always found a way out. And his solutions were brilliant. And you really did need a yellow pad on that one, because time after time, he came up with a solution that you never expected. The solution that was, a valid option, a valid choice where they escaped disaster time after time. I was so impressed with the dialogue in this movie, and I was so impressed with the cleverness of this character and how he always found a way. Yes, he was violent. He did some violent things. And yes, he had a strong will to survive and a strong morality, even though he was involved in cocaine, to help people and help his family and help his family stay together, which he ultimately stayed with them to do that. But his solutions were so elegant. And that, to me, now I've got it for you, Steve. That's why I like this movie, because of those intellectual challenges and solutions.
Well, it's actually, I think, made it even better is that the very first problem he had to deal with was what the family owed to the bookie. And that particular solution was a violent one. And so having started out that way, you would think that's how he's going to solve all of his other problems. But no, the guy is much more intelligent, much more complex. And as the problems got more complex, his reaction to them all were very much more complex.
Yeah, it was a dynamic. It got better and better.
Yeah, yeah, and and then there was that whole country where he's bringing in the Albanians, and then he walks away when he it's really spelled. He just couldn't put the fellow that he only just recently met in a position where at the end of the day he was either going to be going to jail if he made the deal or be killed. Instead, he jeopardized himself and potentially his own family to say no. You really don't want to do that you really don't want to deal with these people. So yeah, it's a fascinating storyline.
Yes, it's a
Many
lot of
lines.
risk. There's a lot of, yes, many storylines, and dealing with business risk, personal risk, criminal, violence risk, and with solutions that were so elegant that it was like watching a chess game, where you make a move and now you've gotten into a much better situation. And in this case, his solutions would have unpredictable events, unpredictable effects. And it got better and better and smarter. And at the end, you didn't know where it was going to go, but you really admired his ability to integrate all of these difficult choices and take the choice that was moral and successful and productive for the people he cared about. And that's why I love the movie for that.
And they ended it where the various storylines really did have a conclusion to one degree or another, but the way in which they concluded, if they want to do another series of episodes, they've got almost perfect freedom to go in a whole lot of different directions, because while there's a conclusion, it really isn't an ending.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree with you. This is ready for an epilogue, another series for sure, because everything is sort of left in place. The larger issues are not resolved, but so far, it worked out as well as it could have. Let me take a moment and ask you about production values. Now, here's a movie made in Antwerp. I mean, there's a lot of American movies that run around Europe these days, and they're very good production values. A lot of aerial shots, a lot of speed chases on European streets and all that. But this was different. This somehow surpassed the American genre of an American movie made in Europe. What do you think? What do you think about the color, the light, the eye candy of this movie?
Well, it was definitely dealing with very restricted areas in terms of where the incidents were occurring. So you didn't have the lengthy car chase, even though you had the criminals. You had some violence, but it really wasn't anywhere near what would have been typical for an American movie. So it was all very, very, very well done. And I mean, I give this series a 10.
Yeah, and to add one point to that is this was like a Vermeer. It was like a Dutch painting because you were inside these homes and offices, mostly homes, that were 400 years old, and the colors and the internal furnishings and furniture was just extraordinary. I don't know how they got these sets together. I don't know if you remember. There's one scene at I forget the holiday, whatever holiday. It was the Sabbath. It was the Sabbath.
Then they had the Rosh Hashanah dinner.
Rosh Hashanah dinner in this room, wood paneled room that was like 400 years old. So my God, I've never been in a room like that. You have to be Vermeer to be in a room like that.
Right.
It was, I mean, it was filled with antiques and beautiful furnishings that just and I had to compliment the producers and directors who could create that, including the costumes, including the way they dressed and their hair and their customs. And by the way, this list of producers and directors, they're all European. A lot
Yeah,
of
they're
those
not people I'm
names,
familiar with.
yeah,
Not familiar with.
none of the actors and the producers and directors all had Dutch names or Flemish names. So this is really a surprise because you see all this action happening, you see all this intellectual activity happening, and it's not American. It's something else.
No, 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 no. But definitely
Well,
worthwhile to watch.
yeah,
Highly recommend.
I totally agree. By the way, with your 10, I've been thinking about that, and there's nothing that would suggest it's anything less than a 10. It might be more than a 10, and I recommend also that everybody should watch this movie, not only for the entertainment value, but for the educational value, and also for the notion that it will take you places that you've never been before. It will introduce you to characters and people and business practices. How would you like to meet a bunch of lawyers and bankers in Antwerp and really get to see how they operate? That's very, very interesting. You don't see that in the U.S. It's a different
Yeah, even the
personality.
scene where because the brother or the father died and then transferring the stock. You had that whole scene where the three lawyers came in and how they're going to transfer and who's going to inherit. Um, yeah, as I said, an awful lot goes on in this series.
Yeah, and a lot of character. There's a lot of character, and you get to meet people at their core character, of that personality. And that scene was extraordinary because there was the woman who called the shots was the sister among the three of them, and she said, "I know the will gives me the business, but I don't want the business myself. I don't think it's a good idea for our father. What was his name? Tati, which is Yiddish for father.
Right.
I don't want us to compete with each other. I want us to be together. And the only way that we could be together and operate this business is the three of us together. So I'm rejecting father's will, and I am insisting that all three of us get the business." That was an amazing scene, Steve. And that plays in every society in the world, actually.
Yeah, and it was totally consistent to what the prosecutor's father said about this whole family in the earlier in the opening episode, where those two characters are introduced about how the whole family stays together, and they are the Jewish families are to be admired. So you have it's yeah,
Okay, well, it's 10 and 10 we got on this one. And
absolutely.
I'll tell you one thing, I was watching at least the parts of the first episode just to refresh my recollection. And I made a decision before our show began today that I'm going to watch it again. I'm going to invest my time into those, what did you say there were, 9 episodes? I'm going to watch
7.
it again, 7, because I need to understand it more fully. I need to pick up the nuances that I missed.
Yeah,
So,
no, I'm sure re-showing. Yeah, there's a lot more that it's hard to catch it all right at the beginning.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So
thank you,
thank you very
Steve.
much for the
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah, it was great. Great to watch. Great to talk with you about it. Aloha.
Aloha.
Thank you so much for watching ThinkTech Hawaii. If you like what we do, please like us and click the subscribe button on YouTube and the follow button on Vimeo. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and donate to us at thinktechhawaii.com. Mahalo.